Hello and welcome to Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV, brought to you by the Center for Constitutional Governance. I am Isaac Kwagala, your host. Today's conversation explores Uganda's political scene amid the high stakes and intense campaigning period characterized by episodes of violence and the attendant issue of the human rights violations. On today's edition of Focus on Parliament, we discuss what this means for the integrity of the outcome of the January 2026 polls. Also, on the program, we reflect on the general performance of Parliament for the year ending 2025. I am now pleased to be joined by an esteemed panel of personalities to dissect these two critical and timely topics. Let me begin from my immediate left. Is a regular on the program, Professor Mwambusa Debesa, who is a distinguished historian and a renowned political commentator. Professor, it's always a pleasure to have you say hello to the viewers.
Morning, the viewers and listeners out there. I'm glad to be here to share with you out there, together with the panelists here, issues of national importance.
Thank you, Professor. Next to Professor is, interestingly, a regular, that is some time back, but also a former host of the program, Mr. Harris Akampulira. Harris is the Speaker of the Kawempe Municipal Council Division. It's a pleasure to have you. Harris, say hello to the viewers.
Hello to our viewers and good morning. It is a pleasure to be back on this show. Thank you, Isaac.
Many thanks for joining us today. And of course, the lady, Ms. Sarah Anzoa, who is a lawyer and a board member of FIDA Uganda. It's a pleasure to have you today, Sarah. Say hello to the viewers.
Hello, dear viewers. I'm psyched to be here.
Thank you for joining us today. And of course, the gentleman is Mr. Abeka Sekanjako, who is an advocate of the High Court, but also a political commentator and the secretary of the Uganda Law Society to the Uganda Law Council. It's a pleasure to have you. Abeka, say hello to the viewers.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Many thanks for joining us today. Last but not least is a mainstay on the program, Mr. Ernest Tarwana, who is a lawyer and a social commentator. Ernest, thank you for joining us today. Say hello to the viewers.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to my fellow panelists, and I'm glad to be here to discuss matters of the day.
Thank you for joining us. For context, we have about a month to the polling date of next year's general elections. This is a contest that has fielded 8 presidential contenders, but it is not without some controversies, especially the violent scenes that we have witnessed on the campaign trail, and also concerns from the opposition that this election could be rigged by the ruling party, the NRM. Well, Professor, let us kick it off from the point where the commander, chief of the defense forces, who also doubles as the first son, Muhoozi Kainerugaba, this week came out with an ominous warning to the voters. And he said that despite the clarity and provision of the law, which allows them to stay within a radius of 20 meters of the polling station, that they should vote and go home. What do you make of that?
Thank you, but maybe before I make up that one, let me give a wider context. Earlier on, you did say that the election process is controversial, and I think it is inherent, it is inevitable that it will be controversial, because if you look at the 5 process stages of an election, they were all marred by controversies, and there was no consensus. You begin with the law, the making of the law. There was supposed to be some reforms, electoral reforms, but the government elected not to bother about them, so we have gone into an election without making electoral reforms, and yet there were very many issues that needed reform. 2, you had the appointment of the Electoral Commission, and there is no consensus. Definitely, there are those who don't trust the Electoral Commission, and I think for good reasons, that the appointment was not impartial. Then you go to management of elections, you can see that statement you are referring to about people not staying to at least witness the counting was also made by the Electoral Commission. So the Electoral Commission has issues. After all, it is composed of people who are known to be partisan. In fact, some of them were party chairmen of NRM. Then you go to electoral policing. Now that is the issue at hand. I mean, the elections is supposed to be policed by the police, the civil police, but now we see the army is taking the lead. Then you go to the question of ballot counting. The machines have just come. There is still controversy about them, and there is no law. There is no legal framework for those machines. Then you have adjudication. You have got judiciary, which is said to be partisan. In fact, the last time I was commenting on it is that this very Peter Chinobe, who is almost given all these petitions, when it came to the Bokedia petitioners, he just received the petition, had the petition, and then told them that he will make a ruling after the period of nomination. So what was it? It was already overtaken by events, and that one was definitely intended. So coming to your very question about electoral policing, generally, you can see the army has taken over from the police. The police is almost a bystander, and when it comes in, it is also militarized. So that statement, in my opinion, was unfortunate. First of all, what mandate does the CDF have to make such a statement? Because even if he had concerns, that is security concerns, he should pass through the Electoral Commission, but not him making directives. And electoral policing is a question of law and order. I don't think it is a question of security, but others can have different opinions until such a time when the national integrity is threatened. But now it is not yet threatened. This standing 20 meters away from the polling officials where they are counting was done last time, and I don't think it was one of the controversial issues. Why all of a sudden is the CDF making such a statements? And I want to predict, based on logic, that directive of his, if it is not handled carefully, it is likely to be the source of electoral violence, because people are going to defy that directive based on the law, because the law is clear that you can stay around at least some 20 meters away in the hearing. You see, the logic, the rationale was to be in the hearing, so that you could hear what the one counting is saying. Now, if you say they go home, then when will they hear what you are counting? So there is a problem. That means there is a maybe premeditated way of rigging, because if there are no people there and you trust only who? The electoral officials, but it is the electoral officials, the polling officials, who actually ballot staff. And that is the major problem. And I have heard, maybe we are going to talk about the electronic machine. We don't know whether you can retrieve information from it so that you can tally and find out whether the ballot papers cast, whether they are the right ones or those which are spoiled, must tally with the thumbprint number in the machine. But if that is not retrievable, that data is not retrievable, I can see the electoral officials are likely to be the source of the problem, plus the CDF. So the CDF, together with Byabakama, the chairman of the Electoral Commission, actually, in my opinion, I stand to be corrected, in my opinion, they are the ones inciting violence. And violence, if it is to take place, most likely it will arise out of that directive, which is not based in law, which is based on the whims of the CDF and the chairman of the Electoral Commission, who are biased, and anybody now suspects that they intend to cheat.
Abeka,
Yes.
let us further interrogate the directive of the CDF, but in a more or less strict legal sense. Because the Constitution prohibits serving military officers from participating in partisan politics. Based on his previous conduct, this is a build-up that has been increasing by the day in the public domain. What do you make of these statements, and what is the likely implication they could have on the integrity of the electoral process?
Well, I would like to thank Prof for the thesis he has made of this, because it gives a clear indication of what has been happening, and of course a firm foundation for me to even comment on it in the legal sense. Well, when we are commenting on, let's say, legal matters, we have to certainly give literal meaning to the words of the law, because that's when you can appreciate the real mischief that the framers of the law intended to cure. When you look at our past, well, I didn't participate so much in the past, but at least I've had the opportunity of reading and appreciating that most of the violences, the violent scenes that we had in the past, all stemmed from the conduct of the men in the uniform. And of course, the conduct and actions of the CDF at the moment, today, they tend to, of course, portray a picture, a clear picture of what used to happen then, of what the framers of the law intended to cure, to prohibit serving military officers from participating in partisan politics. And that is why the law is very clear on that front, that do not participate, do not make comments that are partisan in nature. Now you have a CDF who has continuously not only made comments, but held public rallies and of course, arrested, political, the activists from NUP. It has caused their arrest, detention, and that shows you a very clear indication of the violation of the law. But now it takes us to the question of the political, again, interference and the political will. In that you have, well, of course, is so much associated with the government in power. He's the first son. So you would not imagine any institution, especially in a situation where we are, to take serious action against him. But I think that under the law, the statements that he has been making, they are triable. He should be in court, facing a trial. It should not be Dr. Besige to face a trial. It is the CDF to face a trial for the comments he has been making, for the tortures that he has actually himself uploaded on his social media handles. It should be himself, but not the current political leaders that we see today facing trials for even no offenses at all. Yet for him, he's continuously committing offenses, but not facing any trial. So maybe that's why the role, again, it takes you to the role of the officers of like the DPP, their role, because they are the ones that are supposed to take, because some of the comments that he makes are criminal in nature. Like Prof has said, you cannot be out there inciting violence day by day, and you continue living at large like that. Yes, the gentleman should not even be serving. for his conduct. That's my perspective. Because if the framers of the law intended that we should not go back to that dark past, so for any person who tends to take us, that side, should be handled firmly.
Abeka, before I invite Harris to discuss the issue at hand,
Yes, please.
how much of an effect do you think these comments are likely to have on the attitude of the security forces while policing the electoral exercise come the January 15th?
Of course, if he is the leader of the forces, it just gives you the attitude, the general atmosphere that if your leader is behaving that way, he goes out, utters words, and then no one, is seen bothered, especially from the forces that are supposed to put him to order. So if he's not put to order, you cannot expect him to put his men in uniform, the rank and file, to order if they go astray.
Harris.
So that, just a minute, that arrogance is going to, you're just going to continue, and you're going to, I just imagine that maybe that's why you even have started seeing the abductions, and then they abduct, they kidnap, they detain without trial, and they do not even seem bothered to come out and, present that person they have arrested or abducted in material time, and then later on, arrogantly, they come out to say that, well, this person has been, in our, custody and all that. It's just because of the arrogancy of their leader.
Harris, as a political actor, I want to imagine you are extremely concerned about these remarks by the CDF. What is the National Unity Platform, the party that you represent in leadership, considering to do about this? Because you have framed this election as a protest vote, and if I'm to understand him correctly, his motivation seems to be that we are moving to counter that mantra of protesting, vote and go home. What do you want to do about this whole situation?
Thank you, Isaac. Let me start by stating that the constitution of any nation is only as strong as the people of that nation are able and willing to defend it. And consequently, a group of people in a society gets the leaders it deserves. So that the CDF has been, I think for the previous 2 years or 3 years, campaigning, making political statement contrary to clear provisions of the law, and have been condoned by the citizenry. I think that there is also a level of responsibility that, as the citizens of Uganda, we should be able to take home. I don't think that our leaders, and by our leaders I speak generally, at all the echelons of society, up to the topmost leader of this country, the chief executive officer, who is President Museveni. I don't think that those leaders are solely to blame. We allowed them to get away with so many things. We've emboldened them in their actions. And the democracies we admire, the USA, the British, any democracy you talk about, they have achieved that level of democracy through the hard work of the citizens. Before the British got a constitutional monarch, before they got parliamentary democracy, there was a hard struggle to break away from the monarch, where the monarch was the law, where the monarch was the court, where the monarch was parliament, where it was everything. In other words, where you had what we call dictatorial monarch. And that's what we have here. So the context within which this election is taking place is very clear. It is rubber stamping a dictatorship, and we all know this as a nation. The question of the day is whether as a people, we have reached a level where we are willing to challenge that? I think that's a fundamental question. But as to whether...
That presupposes that we have any urgency at all.
Yes,
is that so?
I think so. I think so. And then we can investigate why there is no agency and urgency at all, as you question. But fundamentally speaking, the fact that the leadership in place has abused the law, starting from the Constitution to every other statute established thereunder, is not debatable. It's not debatable. Anyone, any lay citizen, any person in this country, and even commentators, prima facie, it is very clear the context within which we are operating. The question of the day, Isaac and colleagues, is whether, as citizens of Uganda, we are able to challenge it. We know, as the NUP, that this election is going to be rigged, because it is not the first one to be rigged. 2000, it was rigged. 2006 was rigged. 2011, it was rigged. I mean, there has been evidence thrown over the place telling us elections are not free and fair. The question has been, what do we do about it? And I think that is the bone of contention, as to whether we have matured enough in our resistance to resist non-democratic governance, to resist abuse of the institutions of the state. That is where the jury is still out. But as what needs to be done to stop this dictatorship, we all know. So I leave this to the viewers, I leave this to all of us to do self-interrogation, self-assessment as to whether we are doing enough to challenge, to fight for the freedom, the liberty, the respect of institutions, to fight for the meritorious institutions of the state that we all would like to see this country become.
In a minute, even as we reflect on that takeaway that you leave with us to investigate further as a citizenry, when you say you are participating in a protest vote, you've called it a protest vote, are you protesting in the context of the organization and all the other subsequent processes that come with it, tallying, or you are protesting the result of that process?
Well, I think that the slogan protest vote, and let me, for the record purposes, make it clear that I don't speak for the NUP. We have the official spokesperson, but I associate with the National Unity Platform. So whatever I say them in my individual capacity as a member, but not as a spokesperson. That should be clear. But my appreciation of the slogan, protest vote, is broader, is to say we do not expect a free and fair election, and it's not free and fair by all standards, right away from nominations, and the Prof has laid down a very nice context for this discussion. I don't need to go back to it. And you know, you can see how they are treating the presidential candidate, His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi. It's out there to be seen. We also how he was treated in 2021. So it would be foolhardy for anyone to expect that Kyagulanyi is going to be declared a candidate. And so it is our message to say, look, do not expect a fair result. And the CDF also knows that they know what they're going to do. We all know what is going to happen. We know that the winner of the day is not going to be declared. And so it's a continuous struggle. When we say this is a protest vote, it should not be interpreted in isolation, but as a journey, as part of the struggle, to say there must be a point where we reach that breaking point where we are breaking away from the past, because this is a contest between the future and the past. And the past and the present has been repression. It has been dictatorial rule. So protest vote, anyone can interpret it the way they want, but for me it means that at some point we must resist the unconstitutional declaration of the results.
Okay. Sarah, let us stay with the remarks of the CADF urging Ugandans to cast their votes and flee from the polling stations, in essence, not to observe the tallying process. This is quite important because this is not any other ordinary Ugandan speaking. This is the Chief of Defense Forces of the country. He's at the apex of the security structure of the country. And I want to quiz you on this. As a lawyer and an observer of our country's democratic processes, do you think this could have the effect of encouraging voter apathy? This is a challenge that we are dealing with already in the country, but I have a feeling that this could go deeper and scare away people from participation in the electoral process. And what could be the result of that finally?
Thank you very much. Two things come to play. The tenets of a fair election, which includes transparency and intimidation. And now intimidation has already been in place for a very long time, and I believe it's something that they have been prepping from time memorial. Justice Kanyehamba, as he then was, clearly stated that in the presence of guns, you know, the law is silent. And even in the presence of guns and such intimidation, people's voice in electoral processes remains silent as well, meaning at the end of the day, of course, it is certain that the voices of the people are going to be silent. There's been a lot of conversation around why elites do not want to participate in electoral processes. This is because elites feel like they have something to lose at the end of the day when it comes to their life and their resources. An elite would fear to go into these particular electoral sites, polling stations, because what if a gunfire breaks out? What if there's chaos? At the end of the day, I could lose my life, I could get an injury, and this affects my business, this affects how I show up at office. So at the end of the day, they're trying to protect themselves because of such intimidation that has been put on board by him, and I think it's something he has been doing over time memorial, and it's not going to stop. So that intimidation at the end of the day is surely going to silence the voice of the people who should be voting, yes? So that's why we see we have a big population in Kampala, but not everyone is going to vote, and people are going to continuously continue to boycott these particular elections. An electoral commission has been having conversations around why aren't people coming to vote? Now issues like that subside, and they also speak into, oh, let's do a civic literacy, you know, let's have civic education. But civic education can never doctor issues of the gun. It will never doctor issues of the gun. So that means, and can issues of the guns be doctored? It can only be addressed by perhaps removing the intimidators. And is this going to come to an end? I think that's a question to ask overly again, but some questions do not have answers. So of course, we expect that there's going to be a silence of majority of the people. Then transparency. Transparency is a very key tenet when it comes to handling electoral processes, and it's some of the principles by which the Electoral Commission ought to be established or claim that they are established. And now transparency may also include people viewing these processes. That's why in diplomacies, in diplomacies and also democracies, we have electoral viewers, you know, people who come and view the elections and things like that. But in the midst of such violent things that we foresee would be violent, are our electoral viewers going to want to be in those environments? But also, can the public play a part in electoral viewing? I think this is a right that should be discussed in electoral processes. People should be able to be there to view how the electoral process is flowing, because Prof did speak of things like ballot staffing and things like that. Because if the police is partisan, if the army is partisan, if the polling authorities are partisan as well, who are we going to trust to ensure that indeed the processes went as due apart from the public? Because at the end of the day, these electoral processes are benefiting, the end result of them, who comes into power, benefits the public. That's why they are more keen on ensuring that perhaps the right person gets into power. And because for the authorities who are there, they are already benefiting. So they don't really care because they know their person is going to get in. So I think it's very important that the public is not is not denied the opportunity to view these particular elections. Unfortunately, these things can only remain in word and paper, because whereas we seek for no intimidation, but also the right to view these things from such commentaries that have been coming in, of course, we are not going to benefit from that. And is he going to be held accountable? Definitely. That's a question we can continue to ask ourselves forever.
I actually want to pose the question to Ernest, considering that the CDF, who doubles as the first son, has for a father the president, the sitting president. Then there is every silence from the Electoral Commission, and I think all indications are now apparent that the military is in charge of this electoral exercise. It is no longer the police, it is no longer the Electoral Commission, of course, that is the mandate by law. Do you really get the sense that the CDF could be brought to account for some of these missteps?
And Mr. Moderator, can I compliment something about the CDF's
Sure.
participation? I see even his posters at campaign rallies. So as who? How does a CDF's campaign posters appear on presidential rallies when he's not a presidential candidate? What does that show? What does that portend? That you have pictures at presidential campaign rallies of the Chief of Defense Forces being displayed by the voters. What does that mean?
I believe Prof is talking about how they're slowly manufacturing consent for him. It's bit by bit. It's
And preempting debate.
Yeah, they're preempting a process for him. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen certain conversations that say that our military structure tends to admire how Egypt works, because Egypt is as much a state that has been led by military rulers since 1952. So in a way, we see them as an example. I don't know if it's a good example, but we see them as an example. And if there's going to be any accountability, I mean, how do you hold accountability to someone who has a security architecture behind them? All you have is a voice. The biggest worry is if that voice will remain. If you are to borrow from the Egyptian example, there've been stories of voices and dissent being crushed. So that also portends something problematic. What obviously the presence of the military in our elections shows that the military is not hiding away. It's not, should I say, stepping back. Instead, it's coming more to the fore. I believe around 2021 there were situations whereby if you're around Central Region in Kampala, you'd hear the fighter jets flying across the city, and I do not know if this was deliberate, but to an ordinary person that would be interpreted as intimidation. I don't know if it was a training exercise for them, but you would
Training during the election.
who knows? But I remember at that time I would hear the jets flying by, and obviously the sound of a jet is very distinct. So if that was happening around 2021, who knows what is coming just in January? But obviously, any resident of Kampala has been seeing military vehicles roaming around the city. Even police has military grade riot control vehicles at the moment. I will. This is an anecdotal example. I remember there's a time around 2020 when I was heading to the north for private business, and just as we were driving along Bombo Road, I remember seeing a whole convoy of military carriers coming to Kampala. And the person I was seated next to in jest was saying, if this is how it looks like, there's nothing going to change come next year. Actually, it was 2020 heading to 2021. So at that time, we were seeing obviously the military coming out in force to show its force. And obviously, if any ordinary Ugandan is seeing all of this, maybe some do not take much of it, but any ordinary person is. Rather, any person who is observant will be saying that the military is trying to give a reminder to us who exactly is in control. and obviously it's overt. They do not pretend about it, and that is our status quo. So back to your question about whether he'll be brought to accountability, I mean, as the speakers before me have said at length, how do you exactly command accountability in the face of the gun, and now in the face of fighter jets? So it's an interesting conversation to have, because it has no simple answer, but the use of force without a doubt says that accountability won't be had anytime soon.
Baker,
Yes.
in the second leg of the discourse, we are going to consider in detail the aspect of violence and its impact on the integrity of the electoral process. But briefly, before we go in for the break, I want to ask you about the phenomenon of nomination or denomination, for that matter, because our viewers could be interested. This is something that has quite puzzled us, because it is at a scale we have never witnessed in all the previous electoral cycles in the country. But recently there is a very controversial case where the Electoral Commission has moved to denominate Matthias Walkaga from the race as a contender for the Busiro East parliamentary race. What do you make of this? Because there are opinions that the Electoral Commission has overstepped its mandate. That should be, for example, the mandate of the either UNEB or the National Council for Higher Education or the court, for that matter. Please weigh in.
Well, thank you so much. Well, it is an interesting situation because of the happenings. You know, it started, I think, during that period when they were managing the speaker situation, blocking the contenders, blocking this one, and then it grew into what we are seeing today. Well, about the Walukaga case, I may not comment specifically on the details because of the sub judice rule. I do not want to bias the judge. In some way, I might give a superior opinion. Well, but strictly on the mandate of the Electoral Commission, well, I think I may blame it a little. I might blame the Electoral Commission for whatever is happening right now, because it is their duty to ensure that whoever gets nominated does qualify to run, you get, and be voted for. I mean, when you look at an election, it is not a simple exercise. One of the judges mentioned that it is like a river. It flows like a river from one step to another. So as a judicial officer, as the Electoral Commission, you must ensure that before you let this river flow, ensure that there is purity in the process. I mean, people invest a lot of time, a lot of effort, even the expectations of the electorates, because you send out a different message every time you denominate. Now, it might be a good lesson, let's say, if the issues are on academic qualifications, because we do not want to be led by people who do not qualify. And as I understand, there are different layers of education and leadership that for whoever, anyone can qualify for any, it depends on the level you want. That for local government, there are certain, qualifications for those positions. That's why you see that even Matthias Walkaga has been, a mayor somewhere. And his academic qualifications were not in issue, And then when he attempted to take another step, now issues come. So for that one, I might forgive the Electoral Commission, because there are different layers. So maybe the candidate now here, I'm just saying, maybe he was wrong to attempt to go to a level where he was not supposed to be. Well, that denomination maybe would qualify, because they have given their side of the story, the Electoral Commission, and whoever challenged his candidature. But now I'm looking at the other cases that maybe we will discuss in detail later. I don't know whether it's a clear part of the discussion. A bigger portion of the discussion. But there are situations where the seconders recall, their secondment. That, I did not second. I'm now recalling my signature. And then you end up having candidates declared unopposed. I mean, that takes away a bit of legitimacy from the leaders, between the leader and the led. You lose that, acceptance. You lose the touch of the representation, because as a leader, you're supposed to represent your people. But now look at a situation where people get declared unopposed day by day. So that is the whole opinion I can give about this, that we need a proper management before we let this river called the election flow. Because the moment you let it flow, it shouldn't be blocked for non-issues.
You've just triggered me to...
maybe-
Okay, in a minute.
I just wanted to make an addition.
Yes,
As you're speaking up, and I'm playing the devil's advocate.
Yes, please.
Because, time and time again, we've been, scrutinizing the players, the oppressors, but we've not studied the contribution of the citizenry, the electorate, in emboldening the oppressors.
Sure.
No, there used to be a saying that let's frown at the oppressor because he is a bad guy. But now I think that philosophically and I think there's a consensus that even the victim should be looked at. Should be looked at because you must have abdicated your duty in one way or the other to embolden the oppressor.
Sure.
So I think that increasingly on these spaces we need also to encourage the citizens to stand up. Because when, like the example you've given for my friend, we are together in the guild at Makere University. Nyamutoro Fiona, she's now a minister with, in the current regime. I mean, you have people who nominate for the opposition or for the opposing candidate, and then they are seen, they are given money. I don't know what exactly took place, and then they withdraw their signature. They say, no, actually, maybe we are not registered voters in this area, so we cannot second, or we were coerced to actually second. So, but you can clearly see that the regime, whether in their immorality, in their political, immoral games, they're always a step ahead.
Yes, sure.
And that's what Anita Monk did. You may blame her, you may blame all the immorality that comes with all that, but in their political machinations, they're always a step ahead. And I can give you many other examples where we've had candidates being declared. So what I'm saying is that we have a role to play. We have a serious role to play, and I think we need to also shine a stronger light on what we are doing as a citizen, as a citizenry, to stop this kind of political, impunity. It's not enough for us to keep saying, oh, look at what they are doing. Oh, now I think they are going to declare, and at the end of the day, nothing is going to change. I think that if the environment remains as it is, and there's no deliberate planning and organization, like General Mugisha would like to say, we are going to see a transition, probably from maybe the president, maybe to the CDF, as some people have said, and the CDF is going to deploy the military rule, benchmarked on Egypt, like my brother Ernest was saying, and we continue on that. So we need to look out deliberately on those factors that ripen our resistance. Because resistance emerges, it grows, it matures, and it ripens. And once it ripens, that's when you have a meaningful challenge against the dictatorship. So the question is, what are some of the catalysts? What are some of those ingredients that are still missing within our resistance to make it mature and ripen to a stage where we want it?
Thank you, Harris. I should be calling for a break, but I've been triggered. I want to ask Professor a question in 2 minutes, then we can go into the break. It's a rather complex question because, Professor, we seem to be in a serious crisis. Do academic qualifications still have a real-time bearing on the quality of leaders? The voters seem to have another perspective altogether. They don't seem to mind. All they mind about is the sentiment. We love our person, please let our person go through, and then we can affirm our decision on the ballot. How do we solve that contradiction?
The framers of the Constitution, what they had in mind, what mischief, as the lawyers say, they wanted to cure, what they had in mind was that for a member of parliament, you need to have reached a certain level of education to appreciate abstract issues, to appreciate national issues, to appreciate, for example, a budget, to appreciate making of laws and the intricacies involved. So when you pass through an education system, you reach a certain level where you can appreciate abstract issues. Like when we are teaching, the questions you set in primary and you set in O-level and you set at HS high school require different, it's at least different responses from the learner. So at A level, you are supposed to have had a certain level of education to appreciate some of the national issues beyond the village issues. When you are at a local level, you can appreciate the challenges of a house girl quarreling with another house girl or something like that. But when it comes to national issues where you are looking at geostrategic issues even concerning the international system, you are supposed to be of a certain level of education. However, what complicates matters in this one, and you see it is not done in good faith, is not that they are looking at that principle, at that logic of having somebody that appreciates national issues. This is now malice. It is political malice that they are fronting. It is not a question of appreciating the national issues. So I think we should make a distinction there. Those who are raising issues and petitioning is not because they are looking at somebody not capable of discussing issues of at the national level. They are just looking at malicing somebody because the system that we are operating in is skewed in favor of a certain group. Because you can see how the judges are looking at it, how the Electoral Commission. Let me finally comment briefly on the role of the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission gave the mandate of determining who qualifies to stand in terms of education qualifications to UNEP and National Council for Higher Education. So the National Council for Higher Education gave their opinion. And so is UNEP. They say so and so qualifies. And then you go ahead and nominate that person. In my opinion, which is subject to interpretation, once you have given that mandate to those bodies, they have recommended somebody that he qualifies, and you have nominated. I'm not saying that there wouldn't be a challenge or a petition after that. To me, the petition from there now should be handled by another body, which should be the courts of law. Not you again, who has nominated somebody and said he qualifies, who asked the National Council and he says he qualifies, and then you turn around and say this person does not qualify. You, the Electoral Commission, then why didn't you again ask the body that recommended to you that this person qualifies? And two, why is it done in such a way that it is selective? There are issues that have been raised about Sodo, that he didn't even complete O-level. There are issues that were raised about Major General Washandi. That one, you say it's okay. But you jump on this one, who even is at the university already, and who has demonstrated that he did mature age exam, whatever the case may be. So the issue is very complicated, but not complicated at the same time. It is a question of using law, of using procedures to malice. You see, to malice the opponent. And in most cases, those who have been nominated, if not in all cases, are of one party and not the other. is making mistakes a monopoly of one party.
Interesting. Food for thought. Perhaps Focus on Parliament takes a short break. Do stay with us. We'll see you back shortly.
That allow individuals to access, use, create, and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices, and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back. You are watching Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV. In this segment, we continue discussing the issues defining the 2026 general election, which is due in January on the 15th day. Let me now go to Sarah and ask you to elaborate more on the aspect of violence, which we have seen prevalent throughout this electoral campaigning period. Recently, we witnessed very ugly scenes in Barara, and then subsequently in Kawempe, and recently, as recent as yesterday, I think in that is in the sub-region of Teso, Katakwi,
Even last night.
and Palisa. The military is, as Ernest indicated, playing an outsized and overt role in the conduct of the elections. They are not allowing the leading opposition figure, Honorable Kyagulanyi Robert, to campaign and engage with the electorate. Now, in terms of the consequences, some of which we are already witnessing, we have hundreds in detention illegally. There is no adherence to the due process. Then we have the question of silence from the Electoral Commission. They have not come out to draw the strict lines as between what should be the role of the police or the military, for that matter, vis-a-vis their participation in the electoral exercise. So, who do you think should have ultimate responsibility for this gross conduct by the military and the police?
All right, thank you very much. So starting from the point of analyzing what is the role of the military and the police when it comes to elections. Firstly, the military should not even be playing any role in the elections, and the police is there to ensure that, as we call it, we are maintaining law and order in the process of election. And as you are asking that question, it made me, I had a thought in my mind that, you know, uncalled for violence, and I actually realized that violence is actually never called for, you know, and we see that the military forces are putting in forms of, they are overly imposing or doing things that are actually not called for. For example, we saw the tear gas scenes that were there yesterday, yes? People were in the market, they were selling casually. There was no chaos, nothing was happening, and we had this big military truck that was moving, following the presidential candidate, Robert Kyagulanyi, and they were spraying tear gas. Now, if we logically looked at that occurrence, what called for that? Those are clearly political tactics that have been designed to sabotage this particular candidate. They have been properly structured to ensure that they suffocate his election. That's happening in Central. But particularly, we did hear the president also put claims on him that he stole votes from him, you know. So that means perhaps he has a fear that this person has garnered a lot of support when it comes to this particular area. So that means we have to ensure that we strategize to frustrate him every time he's coming to do an election here. Because clearly from the movement, so I am non-partisan, so when I speak on his concern, it's not like I am, you know, but there are laws and there are a way things are supposed to be done. So clearly, when you analyze the situation on the news yesterday, that it was not called for at all. So, and at the end of the day, it's courts of law that are supposed to hold these people accountable, and also perhaps put injunctions and ensure that perhaps police is not doing this or not doing that. And also Electoral Commission has a mandate when it comes to addressing electoral violence. Unfortunately, there are also concerns around them being non-partisan, because silence is also a form of communication. When they're silent about something, perhaps we could say they are endorsing the acts, you know. So on their end, we see endorsement, and on the side of court, yes, and court processes do take time, yet sometimes these forms of violence like this have to be sabotaged at the end of the day, you know. So yes, Electoral Commission has a role to play in this. However, their silence is a clear communication for us that this is an act that they are endorsing. Courts of law can come and do a few things here and there, but then that also takes time, and the directives should have been proper. And the roles of police have to be made very clear in addressing these concerns, because there has not been any push and pull from the people who have been doing their campaign. So why is there a need to bring all these heavy military machines? And it's clearly a structured political sabotaging mechanism. Yes.
Professor, let us pivot a bit and now scrutinize the role of Parliament in this entire political matrix. Parliament is also, by law, supposed to oversight the electoral processes in the country, but it has been characteristically, or rather uncharacteristically, if we are to consider the strict constitutional perspective, silent. Even as you review the overall annual performance of Parliament, help us to highlight what that means for the democratic governance credentials of the country.
Thank you. Parliament is a structure, but when we're analyzing these issues, we also have to look at culture, structure and culture, and how they overlap. By culture here, I mean the political tradition or the political culture. I have said it and will continue to say it again, that all these post-liberation movements and parties in Africa, whether it is Frelimo or ZANU-PF or RPF in Rwanda, NRM in Uganda, SPLA in Sudan, and Eritrea and all that, they are not ready to hand over power to anybody constitutionally. The shift from these post-liberation movements to another dispensation will not come by constitutionally. They have an entitlement mentality. So we look at the mentality, entitlement. They are entitled to the animal they killed. You see, they look at these different countries as their possession, and the citizens are just cogs within that system. Mm-hmm. So it is the attitude. It is a political tradition. So the political tradition of those post-liberation movements like NRM is that Uganda is an entitlement, and they came to power through military means and constructed a state around military norms, and foundational principles were military. So all these things we are seeing are not by accident, and are by design, that we constructed a state around militarism. Parliament is just an institution there to rubber stamp what the movement is thinking about. President Museveni put it very clearly to the public. Sometimes I think people forget his statements, which reflect his policy and attitude. One time, Parliament was complaining that President's office, President's office physically, there is an office, President's office in parliamentary buildings. And the members of Parliament were saying that President's office should get away from Parliament premises, from the building, so that they can occupy those offices. And President Museveni clearly told them that, you know that we captured you. We captured that Parliament, we captured you. So we are not going to leave that premise. And they remained there. That's what he told them.
Yeah, up to now.
And people took it lightly. He was serious about it, that we captured that Parliament. And therefore, with that mentality, Parliament is just there to legitimize what the executive wants. You can see now there are bills which are coming there, these ones of supplementary budget. They are passed by less than, I'm told, 40 people. Just 40 people. They are not scrutinized by any committee which is supposed to be the parliamentary procedure. The rules of procedure is supposed that you are supposed to discuss them. They don't discuss them. They simply go and pass them. This parliament, the leadership of this parliament were people from FDC, and because they want to show, to demonstrate that they removed they washed off the FDC leaning, they have to dance the tunes of the executive. So the current parliament we have, its behavior, its actions are not based on law. They are based on the history of parliament. My friend here had already pointed out how the performance of parliament is determined by its history. So the performance of the parliament of UK, which is the precursor of this parliamentary democracy we have, these democracies we have, is that during the revolution in UK, there was a revolution where actually UK experimented with republicanism. The executive, which was a monarchy, was loading it onto the parliament. So parliament, in connivance with some other military person, Cromwell or somebody like that, in the, was it the Glorious Revolution, I think it was, in 1650 or something thereabout. They overthrew the monarchy, they beheaded the monarchy, and his son went into exile, I think in the Netherlands or Belgium or somewhere. So for 5 years, there was no monarchy in UK. So when Parliament reorganized itself and felt strong, they invited the son who had gone into exile to come to the throne with his wife, but on the terms of Parliament. And therefore, parliamentary supremacy in UK was established since that time and onwards. Now, this Parliament's history is that it was controlled by the executive. From 1920, when it was formed, you know, the governor was more or less the speaker. And he just co-opted some members from the official members that were cabinet members and some others from the Indians and from Europeans until 1940s, I think after Second World War, when he co-opted some Africans. So the executive evolved, the parliament in Uganda evolved as just a walking stick of the executive. When NRA came into power, NRM came into power, and there was NRC for the 10 years, the first 10 years, until 1995. President Museveni was the speaker. When they are giving emoluments to the speakers by the past speakers, President Museveni should be given. He was the speaker.
Maybe he receives.
Maybe he receives. He was the speaker. Chigongo was just acting on his behalf. And whenever there would be a very important issue to pass, he would come and be the speaker. Now, that climate, that basis, that foundation is still standing. Our parliament is just a rubber stamp. It's even worse than a rubber stamp. I don't know what kind of stamp it is. So it just simply endorses. When it comes to these issues now, because parliament is supposed to mediate conflicts, it is supposed to be a structure, but you see there is no power sharing in Uganda at that level. There are no checks and balances. And that's why our democracy is skewed. It has a problem. Because when we say checks and balances, the principle of checks and balances and the principle of power sharing, we call it horizontal accountability. Horizontal accountability is where different organs or organs or agencies of government hold each other accountable. In Uganda, we have no parliament other than some structure designed to legitimize the bills from government. Otherwise, it should have played the role of mediating. But remember, Muhoozi, Kainerugaba, CDF told them that they are clowns. He told these gentlemen and ladies in parliament that they were clowns. And they all kept mum. Any of you dare call me a clown and you will see. You cannot meet me and call me a clown More so when I'm an honorable member and you call me a clown. So they have demonstrated that they are clowns. They didn't say anything. You know, the parliament has a right to call the CDF. In fact, they had called the CDF to come and clarify certain matters. He says, when I come there, you will be crawling, you clowns. Instead, I will beat you. And then he started laughing sheepishly. So what does that portend? It shows that this parliament you are talking about is just a rubber stamp. It has no role to play. And that is a problem, because we should have, in my opinion, if I was even standing, that is what I would talk about. We should have a power sharing democracy in a polarized, a deeply divided society like Uganda. Power sharing between the different arms of government and the power sharing between the different ethnic groups and regions in Uganda should be the norm, because Uganda is a post-colonial state and a deeply divided society. But now this question of having a parliament which exists only in name and is only rubber stamping and is told what to do and commanded what to do and is even attacked and is called all sorts of names, including clowns, which is an abusive term, and they keep quiet. What do you expect from clowns?
Thank you, Professor, for your insights. Abeka, yes, your reflection is on the performance of Parliament for the year ending 2025, but of course, being alive to the context that it's now a political season.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Prof, for walking us through that history, because it is important at least to position the debate, and we know the Parliament we are discussing. So I fully associate myself with the history he has given. And of course, I want to pick it from there now, from, for today, what is happening, what is transpiring. When you are assessing the performance of Parliament, of course, their main role, it is the legislative. You look at the quality of the legislation they have passed, this year, the enactments they have passed, when maybe just assessing this particular year, the quantity and the quality. Because for the quantity, I know they have passed quite a number of them. Every year they pass the tax bills and all that, of course, to even enable the administration of the state. But on the other side, one of the enactments that they passed and they sent out a chilling effect was the UPDF Amendment Act. I mean, if every other person would see that it did them a very great disservice, because the Supreme Court had just passed the judgment in the Kabaziguruka case, especially regarding the trial of civilians in military courts. Now you, Parliament, you sit and enact a law that subjects civilians to military trial, to military courts. I mean, that was a great disservice that Parliament has done to the Ugandans, especially for this year. When you talk about, let me also comment about the supplementary budget. Because as a planner, as a national planner, because the Parliament is the national platform where planning and budgeting and all that stuff takes place, you're supposed to allow a significant portion of public participation, whereby you engage the public on the most engaging questions of the day. You must involve them. You must encourage them to follow what is happening. But now you see that such acts of Parliament, bills are presented, you debate them and enact. Actually, the UPDF Act, it was presented and passed in about 2 weeks. There was no involvement of the public. Even the institutions that you would think that maybe they would have a comment on the law, they were not consulted. So there is no consultation.
People were invited in less than 12 hours to appear.
and the same thing happened to the political parties and other organizations act, the bill that was brought to amend, and brought the whole confusion about iPod and then the National Consultative Forum. Even that particular act, it was during the same period that it was presented, and then political parties, were invited in less than, as Prof has mentioned, in less than 12 hours to make, comments on that act. And Parliament just proceeded without any, opinion, serious opinion and engagement of the public in their work. So I think it shows a further detachment of the parliament from the public, and it shows you who now their master is. Yes, because whatever comes, it goes through. I've not seen any serious engagement between the parliament and the executive. It has not been there. It has not been there. Yeah, and of course, when you look at their other roles, accountability, of course, this is with due respect, because I know that these are headed by the opposition, but they have been extremely quiet this year. Of course, it is an electioneering period, but when you look at the PAC and all other committee, COSASE and what have you, they have been quiet, because even the Human Rights Committee, it is, in essence, it is an accountability committee. But what have they done? Because when you look at all these kidnaps, abductions, arrests, and then detentions without trial, so much is happening, and they are, they are not making any comment. And on the question of representation, I think they are still failing, like Prof has mentioned. They're passing bills with just 40 members in parliament. I mean, is that fair representation? Yeah, so we need, and actually on that very point, we need a serious deliberation on the representation, especially towards this cycle, the electioneering period, because you cannot.
But before you go for that debate, you must first debate the political tradition. It is militarism. All of those things you are talking
Political
about.
culture.
You see, there are structural constraints. Earlier on, you people were saying citizens should come in and do what, but there are certain structural constraints. These people came through the military means. They have constructed a state around the military means. Even in Egypt, where citizens rose up, the military again came back
and took over.
So
for me, Abeka, and I think that the biggest benchmark for assessing the performance of Parliament should be that is tied to its fundamental role. It's a historical role of Parliament, which is that of checks and balances. Checking the executive. How many bills, tax bills you've passed, that is very easy. Anyone can do it. How many, whatever bills that do not, check in their inherent nature, check the excesses of the executive. That is very easy. That's very easy, anyone can do. The measure of any institution, let alone that of Parliament, is to what extent has it been able to check the excesses of Parliament. So how much has it been able to cut back on the corruption? He's just talked about the amendment of the UPDF Act. That was a glaring instance of failure of Parliament. But again, I think that Prof, nails it home when he says that Parliament, just like human beings or any human institution, is a creature of habit.
Yes.
It's a creature of tradition.
I
could, for purposes, most of our viewers may be Gen Zs, I could use the computer language. In the computer language, we have what we call the operating system, and then we have the program. The operating systems provide the environment within which the program is going to run. That of Macintosh is different from that of Windows. So, but the experience is different. So if you have a particular program, say for Word, writing Word, or you have another program, or nowadays it's an age of applications, let's say WhatsApp and so forth, it's not going to perform any function outside that which it was programmed to do. Similarly, our Parliament operates in a particular operating environment, operating system, but it also runs on a program. That program is such that during hardships, when it's supposed to check excesses of government, should be silent. That's how it was programmed. Professor has given you the historical reasons why it is programmed that way. So yes, our Parliament, why? And we could go deeper. The person, majority of them are NRM. Majority of them are inherently, are overwhelmingly NRM. All of them, they get monies for their campaigns from the political father. and political son. Nowadays, there are two levels of thieving. Do you believe in the political father, who is the president? Yes. Okay, tick. Do you believe in the political son?
You did.
Yes, you tick. That's where Theodore Honorable failure to believe in the political son. So when the political son comes and says that you clowns, what are you talking about? He's right. He's right in this environment. He's right because he's the one who approved. He's the one who gave the money. Yes, so that's a kind of parliament we are talking about.
But Harris, not to sound cynical, you seem to paint a very grim outlook, which compels me to think: is Parliament still viable?
Haven't you seen the Speaker, after launching his mansion and the school, went there in the names of the political father and the political son?
Yeah, that's what she said.
And the Holy Spirit.
And the Holy Spirit? Weren't they in that? Isn't it very clear? Isn't it very clear? Like Prof has said that this Parliament, it is so incapable of checking any excess of this government. They will beat you, they will kill you in the most extrajudicial way, and the Parliament remain quiet. Who doesn't know that Eddie Mutwe, the bodyguard of the president of National Unity Platform, was being held, and CDF came open and said he shared the picture here and on a tweet in the names of Kene Rugaba. I call it his ex-handle because he has never come out publicly to deny it. Otherwise, if it was being, propagated in his names, whereas not, he should have come out on it, open it, said this is not mine. So to the extent that he has never denied it, we take it to be his account. So a picture was shared on that account where this gentleman has been held incommunicado, using methods of arrest outside the law. He said, no, I'm the one with him. Here he was learning Runyankore.
I'm teaching him Runyankore.
That is in a democracy worthy of its name. That is unacceptable. It's simply unacceptable. That alone is unacceptable. But as a citizenry, we condoned it. Parliament, which is our first line of defense, it condoned it. All the security agencies, everyone, the judiciary condoned it. So that is a microcosm in the bigger grand scheme of things that should paint a picture of where we stand as a nation and our democracy. And for honest conversation to begin to take place on the kind of job we have if we are serious about liberation. Because how on earth does someone, a CDF, arrest someone, and it's not just now Eddie Mutwe, many other. Recently I've heard the Reverend Father of Masaka. He disappears after disappearance, and then they say, UPDF after a number of days, they say, no, we are the one with him. Let us, show us what you can do. This, it's not mistake, make no mistake. Maybe miscalculation. No, they are sending a clear psychological message to the citizens of this country that we can get you if we want you. We can pick you from your home, we shall arrest you, and nothing will happen. It is calculated. And that takes us to the journey that he was talking about on the road to Egypt. Because trust me, if nothing happens, the next 5-10 years in the governance of Uganda, in the polity of Uganda, is that we are going to full-fledged military rule, as is the case of Egypt.
Ernest, help us break down this sort of paradox, because all the speakers seem to register consensus that Parliament is a liability to the state and the citizenry, for that matter. But yet again, we seem to have a very intense, spirited competition among...
The only area I'm very sorry to interrupt, but I think this should come out. The only area this Parliament excels very well is money eating. Proceed.
You could have assisted him with an answer, but I mean,
When it comes to money eating, those ones are money eaters. I think in the next parliament, the speaker could even bring a Bentley. Please
I
forgive
think
me.
statistics indicate that we have an unprecedented number of candidates expressing interest in joining parliament. Why is that the case? Even on the side of the opposition.
Any Ugandan with a working mind knows how to follow the money. So obviously when they look at parliament, they see it as a big cash check. Just as I was receiving the topic for today, I decided to go on Parliament Watch's website and go through the tracking what Parliament has done over the past year. And when I looked at the bills, I saw the number was not as significant. But when I looked at the loans that they were taking out, now those ones were heavy. I was seeing loans coming from ADB, from Asia Development Bank, from Korea, from various agencies.
Even some money lenders.
Yes, even obviously they have not
International money.
exactly they have now looked away from the Americans and the Europeans who are very demanding in their loans and are now turning east. So obviously when you look at that in comparison, you realize that is obviously their main priority at the moment, rubber stamping all the loans coming in. Even just before they broke off for the Christmas season, they had just pushed through a loan, I think coming from Vital Baring, with regard to financing UNOC and buying shares in Kenya Pipeline Company. So you can see that now that in particular is fast-tracked, but pertinent laws and bills, they take their time with that. It can run for close to 2 years. I believe we have someone from FIDA here. The marriage bill has taken forever.
20 years, over
20 years. But when it's a financial commitment, that takes less than a month. So obviously we can see that our parliament, when it comes to money matters, that runs quickly. When it comes to issues related to various Ugandans across all the aisles with regard to gender, human rights, ethnicity, that takes its time. But when it comes to money, obviously money talks. So even with the number of people coming for parliamentary positions, they're obviously seeing their wheels being oiled in terms of finances. I mean, anyone who walks along Parliamentary Avenue can obviously see this is a different version of Uganda from the ordinary Uganda. I mean, just a walk, you see the number of Land Cruisers speeding by. How many Uganda? I mean, you see Land Cruisers 2024, but how many Ugandans see that? Not many Ugandans see those vehicles. So obviously, any ordinary Ugandan watching this says that this is clearly where the money is. How many Ugandans can pull out 500 million to purchase a vehicle? But in Parliament, that is possible. How many Ugandans can pull out 500 million to finance their businesses? Not many, but that is possible if you have a political connection, or if you're within the good graces of someone within the corridors of Parliament. So what this shows about our parliament is that they are indifferent when it comes to talk about matters that relate to the ordinary Ugandan. But when it comes to oiling their wheels, they're very steadfast at that. And that is very concerning because, I mean, as you can see, the turnover rate of parliamentarians is quite high. We shall see next year if the people who came in 2021 will still remain. So it shows that it's heavily contested, especially with regard to the benefits that come with joining the parliament. And obviously even the ordinary citizen knows that their vote is sold to the highest bidder. Show me what you can do for me and I'll vote you in, or how compelling this person is. Because even when you listen to the pitch on the ground, it's not like they're talking about, oh, we are going to discuss these matters of policy. It's more like mpako we. That kind of, I don't know if I'm using the right Luganda, but it's that kind of transaction. So from what I've observed this year as a whole, our parliament has not done anything substantive in the legal arena. But when it comes to borrowing from external lenders, they've been very active.
Interesting. Sir, As we wind down the program, your evaluation on the performance of Parliament for the year ending, generally across the board.
All right, thank you. Firstly, Parliament has been deplatformed, and we see that through the fruit it has been producing. Its mandate specifically is, whereas it is supposed to put out laws, it's supposed to also safeguard those laws and ensure that they are being upheld. However, from what we are seeing, it has been deplatformed in a way that it ceased to speak as it should, and its mouthpiece has been taken by the executive, and it only speaks when it's speaking for the executive. For example, through the laws that have been put in place. He did mention that for a very long time, perhaps women had been asking for protection when it comes to the confines of marriage and protection from certain forms of violence and sexual violence, but these things are not given keen regard, yet majority of the population are in depth need of this. But also when it comes to their budget allocations, whereas they have been borrowing money, the reflection of their performance also comes from how the budgets have been upheld, yes? So the budget allocations, when it comes to things of necessity, things to do with health, still each and every day in Uganda, we have over 29 to 35 women dying when they are giving birth each and every day in Uganda. That means Parliament has failed to push up to, you know, the requirements of the Abuja Declaration when it comes to ensuring that there's provision for health. Development partners have pulled out and they continue to pull out. That means Parliament has to step up its game, meaning the budgets have to speak into the needs and fill up the gaps development partners have left. And this is something they continue to do. However, whereas they claim that they are doing these things, at the end of the day, we still go into perhaps schools, into medical centers, and we see that these gaps continue not to be filled. We have hospitals closing, we have schools closing. We saw that picture of people doing a PLE, and they were out there, you know, and these are areas that Parliament has to pour into through their budget allocations and things like that. So for me, my most pained area is the area of budgeting. And I think it's an area that Parliament, especially the new coming Parliament, we need to see their voice when it comes to the arena of the budget. Since when it comes to the arena of the law, I mean, for us who have been in the struggle, there are laws we are always pushing for. Currently, we are pushing for the sexual offences bill. We are pushing for the legal aid bill. I mean, legal aid bill to protect, you know, a citizen who needs some justice and support. And this does not even threaten the government at the end of the day, because in Uganda, for you to push anything, it can be successful if it's not touching the major seat of the godfather of this country, you know. But some of our bills are innocent. Why aren't these going through? Because the Parliament has shown that they disregard the welfare of the people. So for me, in that area of the budgeting, if we could see better budget standings next year and fill up of gaps that have been left by development partners and USAID.
I must appreciate you, my panelists, Professor Mwambusa Ndebesa, Harris Akampulira, Sarah Anzoa, Abeka Sekanjako, and Ernest Tarwana, for your able participation on today's edition of Focus on Parliament. Many thanks to you, our esteemed viewers, for your company. That's all we had time for you today. We'll see you next time. Be blessed.